Hello everyone, this is Anna, founder of Theneo, and today I would love to show you all of the latest updates from us. First of all, if you haven't heard about us, we are an API documentation and governance platform. We've been automating API documentation now for more than 12,000 companies globally. We were the first ones in the API management space to create its own proprietary language model before ChatGPT was even out. We love highlighting that. And let me show you how it all works. By the way, you can have both public facing and internal facing documentations in Theneo. So let me create a project. And what is a project in Theneo? It can be an API reference or other type of documentation from getting started guides or just guides, SDK documentations, FAQs. But most of our use cases are for the API references. And you can have anything from REST, GraphQL, Async API, SOAP API, it doesn't matter. And if you don't have API spec, it's fine as well. You can all build that in Theneo. For now, for demo, let me just import a sample file. The next step is, if you're an engineer like myself and you hate writing documentation, one of the biggest aspects is creating the content, right? The humanly readable content. So we take care of that for you. You can select either full AI assistance, or if you don't want to, and you can maybe manage that in our web editor, that's something that you can select as well. That's what I'm gonna select so we can see also how we import markdown content from your spec. On top of AI Writer, we also have AI Search. So we were the first one also in the industry to create AI Search in the documentation. And I'm going to show you how that works. I'm going to make my documentation public, and we can talk about our automation a little bit later. Great, my documentation is now completed in just a couple seconds. Let me see how everything looks like. We can go to a preview, check out how it looks like both in light and dark mode. Everything that you are seeing here, obviously you can fully customize it, not just by content, but also look and feel of your documentation. What we pride ourselves is amount of customization that you can do in Theneo. And by the way, this is how it looks like when you are looking at your request, responses, and some of the content you will see already has descriptions. This is based on your API specification that we were able to import. But some of the sections also you will see here, for example, the body parameters, all of the descriptions here are missing. So let's go to our web editor to change that. This is how our web editor looks like. We call it combination of Figma and Notion. Why is it Figma? Because like Figma, you can do live collaboration in Theneo. Let me switch to light mode because it could be easier to see that in light mode. I'm going to open this in a new window. Another window, now you can see in which section I'm at. I can write content, you can see in real time. You can see all the widgets that I'm using, and just in real time, we can collaborate together. Obviously, this looks much better when you have more than one person collaborating together, and it's much easier to do all the content changes with technical writers or anyone other team members involved in creating your documentation. Let me close the other window and let's go back to here. So why do I say that we have Notion-like editor? First, how you make changes to your documentation, all the options that you have to all the widgets that we offer. From dynamic content to cards and things like that, steps, etc. We make sure that your content ends up looking beautiful. But also we have a lot of templates in place. Things like error codes and status codes that are specifically designed for APIs that you can have, you can always delete if you don't like the way it looks, or add your content on top of it. Completely up to you how you want to structure it. Let's go to one of the sections that has an API request. Let me delete this for now. So let's go to the section that was missing descriptions. I believe that was one of these. Yes, if you can see, all of the descriptions and additional information are missing. First of all, if you define all of these like additional properties, then all of these will automatically populate. But let's say you haven't added all this information, you can always add it through Theneo. I will say this is required. I can add default value. Again, completely up to you how you want to populate. This is obviously a fake API. So I also want to add descriptions, but I don't want to go through each one of those and write myself. So that's where I can use our AI assistant. So our AI assistant will go through the description for the entire section, for the header, for the request body, for the responses, basically everything that you need. So I can either select individually descriptions, or I can say populate all the descriptions for me. There you go. So now I don't need to spend hours on this. All of that was generated for me. So what happens when you don't have an API spec and how we can build that API definitions in Theneo? It's very easy. You can create a new section. Let's call this demo. So first of all, this is also how it will look like if you want to create some kind of content. You just simply start typing your content, or you can always import your markdown content. So I'm gonna go to the widgets here and get API management, and I'm gonna start defining my API. So let's make a post method. I'm gonna call this demo. I'm gonna add in header authorization. Let's do beer token. I'm gonna do some random values here. Right, so you'll see here on the right side, all of that is populated for you. By the way, we have a lot of different language wrappers, so we also automatically convert all of these. But if you want more sophisticated SDKs, you can either import them, or we also partner with different companies that you can import your SDK from. So anyway, now my API is completed as well. And by the way, if you didn't have an Open API spec before, you can use our own CLI to export documentation from the now to an Open API spec. I'll be talking about that a little bit later. So I'm done with all of my changes and I can either preview, but let me just publish it so we can see how the published version looks like. There you go. So this is how my documentation looks like. Like I mentioned, you can customize it everything from the colors to fonts to adding custom CSS, custom JavaScript. So it's very unique to your own branding. Not only, by the way, in light mode, but also in dark mode. So yes, this is as a user, I'm going through your documentation. I'm looking at all the definitions on the right side. I'm seeing the requests, and also I can try out the API in real time. So I'm going to click on API Explorer. Unlike in other platforms where you will see that documentation is tested inside, we offer a more immersive API exploration platform. All of that is obviously also automated and automatically generated for you. So how does it work? This is generated for anyone in mind, from engineers to beginners or even non-engineers. Just as simple as just filling out the information. If I have any questions about the property, I can always hover over, get additional information. I don't even need to go back to the documentation. I can obviously send my own code as well, if that's what I prefer. And when it comes to authorization, we can either automatically pull the bearer tokens or the user can add that manually. I can click on run requests, and in real time, which this is a big API, I'm getting an API response. As a user, I can go through all the definitions here, and again, all of that is automatically generated for me. So I mentioned about our own AI search. So how does it all work? First, let's talk about search. So we do advanced search. So not only we will search through a content, but API requests, API response, endpoint. So it's very easy for the user to find the information they're looking for. But let's do the Ask AI. So how does it work? I can ask a question like, how do I create a customer using this API in, let's say, Django? So in real time, I'm going to get a response from OpenAI. In this case, for Ask AI, we are using OpenAI, but this data doesn't go to anywhere else. The Search AI platform was built inside Theneo. We are not using any other third-party providers. But if you don't want to use OpenAI and you want to use any other providers, that's something that you can configure in Theneo as well. So great, I have my response here. Again, the questions can be anything from business related questions to technical questions. As long as there is some kind of reference, we'll be able to give a response. One of my favorite features also is automatic changelog. So how does it work? With changelog, we're automatically detecting all the changes that are going on with your API or with your documentation. Let me show it to you. So this is how it looks like changelog for my documentation. I can see all the structural changes in API, all the new endpoints that I have added, and also if there are ever breaking changes, all of that information is highlighted. As a user, I can also filter by the breaking changes, what was added, what was deleted, and also I can enter my email address and I'll get email notification every time there are changes to my documentation or someone else's documentation and APIs. So this is all when it comes to the documentation. Now, how does it look like when you're managing all this documentation and APIs in Theneo? First, you will see here is quick analytics about your documentation, how many users have accessed it, views, sessions. If someone have left a comment from here, which they can do it in every section, if there is a comment, or if they want to select something in particular, all of that will show up in our dashboard. Let me refresh it so we can see how that looks like. So you can see in this case, I'm also authorized, so user, so you can also see my information, which section I have added the comment and what was the comment. You can also filter in terms of the AI search what the users have asked, and you can export the data as well. Now, when it comes to the configurations, if you don't like something, let's say a particular feature, you want to disable AI search or HTTP methods that are displayed here in the documentation, you can configure all of these things. Now, also when it comes to for the API testing, if you have some kind of advanced structure where you need to pull username and password, add it in the header, or retrieve some information from request body before we even run the request, all of this configuration can be done through our pre-request script. Also, you can connect to your domain. You can add your own custom domain, custom menus, and configure however you want to. When it comes to the access management, other than obviously changing from public to private or other way around, you can add your team members. You can invite them as editors, as viewers. So, for example, I can add this viewer as this user as a guest. So, if they are not in our platform already, they will receive email notification. They will just need to set a password, and that's it. Why would you want to do that? So, let's say in case you have for public-facing API documentation, or just for your documentation, some endpoints or some sections that you don't want everyone to see it. First of all, I can make this private, and only those users that already have access to this documentation will be able to see it. But I can go even further. I can make this user specific, which means that if I select this user, only this user will be able to see that particular endpoint and no one else will be able to do this. This is perfect if you have, let's say, client-specific content that you don't want everyone else to see it, or maybe not every team member should have access to all the content. And by the way, we do not have limitation on number of users or guests that you can have in Theneo. You can add as many as you want. SEO is very important for public-facing documentation, so we offer a lot of customization. We generate a lot of things automatically, but if you want to change the titles, the descriptions, URLs, you can all do that from SEO management. With the public changelog as well, if you want to delete something that we have generated, you don't like it, if you want to add your own release notes as well, that's something that you can configure. Lastly, when it comes to the API versions, if you have a couple versions, you can always import a new file or use a last version as a reference. You can say which one is recommended or add additional flags, which one is default, and the user can switch between the versions as well as you can switch between the versions for that particular project. Okay, so I mentioned how you can customize the branding. So how does it look like? If you want to customize it colors, both for light and dark mode, for all the elements you are seeing, from the borders to secondary button color and sidebar menu, all of these are fully customizable in Theneo, both in light and dark mode. You can add your custom CSS and JavaScript as well, and obviously more easier configurations like font, logos, and things like that. So something that we get a question often is, okay, so I made all of these changes in my documentation. It looks great, but how can we automate this? So first, this is our own documentation user guide, so feel free to check it out. You can go through our own CLI and SDK tools and GitHub Actions. So how does it work? So for example, if you're using GitHub Actions, you can connect it and you can tell us where your API spec lives. To be automated, you need to have some kind of spec, and you can let us know where that spec lives and how you wanted that to be automated. For example, if you select the merge option, every time there is a new spec imported, we'll only update those API endpoints that you have updated in your code or new parameters. None of the content will be overwritten. So if your technical writer was working on the content or anyone else, none of the work will be overwritten. You can also, there are a lot of configuration options from here, auto publishing, reviewing, and all these things. By the way, also, if you want to export to OpenAPI spec or to Markdown content, you'll see that we have a couple options here available. You can export to OpenAPI spec, or you can export to the Markdown and spec combination. I highly recommend checking this out because even if you didn't have an API spec before, with Theneo you can export it and now you can have an API spec. Also, something that I want to highlight is that compared to other platforms, you will see that we do not have limitation on how your documentation can be structured. If you want to have inside a spec also user guide, and let's say in the subsection, you can go ahead and have it. You can have as many subsections, you can structure the content however you want to. If you, let's say you want to move this update customer in guides, feel free to do that. It's again completely up to you. So this is when it comes to the documentations, but let's talk about the developer portal. So you'll see that we have a lot of different templates in place in Theneo. Once you go through the first initial steps, you will be prompted to select your template, and afterwards you can either export and import your code. You can use all these low code, no code solution things that we have here. So for example, I can just drag and drop that, connect to the video, change things like that. But let me show you exactly how it looks like for a couple of our customers. Here's an example from Swap that I absolutely love. This is how it looks like, and this is the type of information that they're showcasing. These are the information that is relevant for their own users. They're also showcasing how the documentation, how they can use the documentation, like the AI search. They have APIs, release notes, mandates, all of those things set up in Theneo. They also have multiple languages, authorization, and a little bit of API catalog as well. If you look at an example for PayMob, which is slightly different, they're a payment processing company in different regions. For each one of those regions, they have their own separate landing page. So if we go to Egypt, this is how it looks like. This is the content that is very, very specific to Egypt. Let's say I'm interested to know how I can get started. I can click on it and I will see first user guides. Also, you will see that their documentation is very different. A lot of user guides, even before I go to one of the APIs. Let's find that API. There we go. They also have running Postman option. Again, this is how you can customize it in Theneo. Lastly, I will showcase very simple use case from Yom. This is how it looks like. So they're using Theneo for a small API catalog where they're showcasing all the different APIs that they're offering. So let's say I'm interested in Ledger API. I can click on Ledger API and I can explore their APIs. And again, their documentation also looks very different. And this is how much you can customize it in Theneo and making sure that everything is very unique to your own APIs and your own use cases. Feel free to give this a try. This is very quick overview of how Theneo works. If you're watching this during our product hunt launch, we would highly ask if you could upvote, share your reviews, or share your comments. And if you have any questions, always email us at hello@theneo.io. Thank you.